thank you so much for the warm welcome, and thank you everyone from all around the world for joining this awesome webinar. I'm so glad to see the popularity and how many people were able to make it, and I know you're in different time zones, so very much appreciate it, and hopefully we'll make it worth your time. This will be the first webinar in a series that's going to focus on transforming the way that you think about portfolio management. And so the webinar series is called Agile Portfolio Planning with Kanban, and this is part 1. And for part 1 specifically today, we're going to talk about rethinking how you think about portfolio and capacity management. I do want to warn you ahead of time that this is sort of an advanced webinar. So if you're completely brand new to Agile, some of this is going to feel like, whoa, this is a little bit too much. We do assume that you at least have some of the basic background. If you don't, I highly suggest that you go to agilevideos.com and watch maybe some of the preliminary Intro to Agile, Intro to Scrum videos, or watch the popular webinars that have already been recorded over at the Agile Community of Practice just under the webinar section. But again, this is going to be a little bit of an advanced topic, so prepare to scratch your head a little bit. But I'm hoping that you're going to keep an open mind as we talk about some of these things that might be quite different than the way that you've done portfolio management and capacity management before. Okay, we've already went through the introduction, so I'm going to skip this. I think a lot of you know who I am. I guess I just want to read the bottom part over here, which is I'm really passionate about, obviously, transformations and helping organizations succeed, and that's what our company does. But I really believe in servant leadership is the way to lead that change. So instead of command and control, empowering people and bringing out the best of your teams. So something that's very dear to my heart. So we're going to talk about what is the problem with current portfolio issues, rethinking portfolio management. We're going to talk about what does the Agile Portfolio Lifecycle look like, and then some practical steps. The Portfolio Lifecycle diagram that I'm going to share with you towards the end of this webinar, and you'll also be able to download the cheat sheet. I zipped up a whole bunch of different things for you. This life cycle diagram is the one that we're going to go through during the rest of the webinar. So this one is setting the context, and then we'll go through this one in a lot more detail as we take it and tear it apart, sort of in the upcoming webinars, piece by piece. So I'd like to engage you a little bit. A lot of you are here to learn about portfolio execution and planning from an Agile perspective. What have been your challenges? What are your top sources of waste, things that you do that just don't make sense, or challenges, and you're like, I wish we could do this differently in terms of portfolio management. So go ahead and on the chat window right now, share some of your ideas. Okay, it looks like we've got shifting priorities, constant organizational changes. Cheryl says scope creep. Dina says reporting. Too many projects all at the same time. Resource sharing. Too many chickens. Financial limitations. Unclear project definitions. Prioritizations. Very little organization. Resource conflicts. Cost cutting. Unclear initial requirements. Strategy is unknown. I like that one. Unrealistic targets. There's no alignment. Iterative requirements, lack of knowledge, it's moving so fast on me, scope creep and reporting, can't say no to new work, that's a really good one, we're going to talk about that one. Too many layers of oversight, okay, very good. So, too many running all at the same time. Yeah, so that's a really good list, thanks for sharing that. I like that one too, too many meetings. Too many meetings are also a source of waste in terms of getting the best out of your portfolio. So here's the top challenges. Large backlog of work that's not getting done. And quite frankly, these challenges that I'm going to go through are the drivers for change. This is why organizations are moving to Agile. This is why organizations are thinking about changing portfolio and doing it differently, because a lot of these are common in several organizations. So we got a lot of work that we're not getting through. Constantly changing business priorities, silos, handoffs, and heavy processes, lack of trust and communication between departments, slow time to market, so it takes forever to get anything delivered, missing, incomplete, changing, and ambiguous requirements. So that sort of covers all of the stuff with requirements, right? So they're not there, it's incomplete, or it's changing. There's no focus, and I would say this is one of the biggest ones from all the organizations that we have been consulting with. The lack of focus, the multitasking, everything's being done at the same time has been the biggest source of inefficiency and waste. There's no way to measure enterprise capacity. The way that we do it today is very resource focused. John is 20% on this project, 50% on that project, 35% on this project, and another 50%. When you add it all up, it doesn't even equal 100 anymore. So enterprise capacity measurement is very difficult. Some people do it, some people don't. Most organizations struggle. Ineffective and wasteful meetings. Quality and rework issues, another big problem, obviously, because of a lot of this, probably. Unrealistic estimates and due dates set by the wrong people. So we're not really asking the team. Someone out there in marketing is taking the leap of faith and saying, you know what, yeah, sure, we can get that done, and we can get it done by January 25th. How about that? And coming back to the team and telling the team to just go do it. There's a better process, and that's why it just makes it really hard, because it's unrealistic. Heavy engineering and testing processes, no automation. I've been with companies that takes them forever to compile or deploy or even test anything. I mean, it's a long process. It's so heavy that it's hard to be nimble and be agile. And there's no automation. Everything's done manually. Lack of empowerment, low engagement and morale. People that live under a lot of commanding and controlling type leaders really just become zombies. They just do what they're told, and so you really don't get any innovation, any ideas, any team collaboration. It becomes very demoralizing, and so that's why we will talk a lot about also servant leadership. Specialized roles is another source of waste, is people that only do one thing and they do it well and they're not willing to do anything else. Lack of collaboration between business and IT, or business and the team. Overproduction, working on projects that are not useful or features that are not valuable, and then we're just not even measuring what we're actually doing. There's no ROI or value measurement. I know this is overwhelming, but these are a lot of the main reasons, and maybe you have many of them, maybe you only have a few, but a lot of this is the reason why organizations are changing. So when someone says, what problem are we trying to solve? These are the problems that we're trying to solve. And if you don't have them, then you don't need to change anything. But if you do have them. I also like to do this workshop with executives, and this was a group of CEO, CIO, C-executive, and when you look at this, they pretty much said the same thing. Their big sources of waste was knowledge of the bigger picture, undefined problem, lack of clarity, lack of communication, too many people in the meetings. That's what the executive. So we're all on the same page here, including executive level. To solve this problem, it's really not about Agile. So as much as I'd like to tell you, Agile is the silver bullet, it will solve all of your problems, that's not the case. What we are really attempting to do using Agile and Lean and all these things that you hear us talk about is we're attempting to help organizations transform to a high-performing organization. And my opinion is it's going to take a combination of process transformation skills in addition to a people transformation skills. And we are going to focus today a little bit on lean portfolio management and the concept of stable teams. But I just wanted you to know that, transforming engineering and testing practices, yes, of course, applying Agile and Scrum at the team level, at the enterprise level, fixing requirements, right? Going into the soft skills of learning facilitation skills, helping leaders, and I'm not just talking about managers, anyone can be a leader, a team lead, learn about servant leadership and how to empower others, the concept of stable teams, which we'll talk about today, and then just helping people know how to collaborate and work with each other and resolve conflict. These are all sort of the formulas or the recipes that we talk about in terms of building a high-performing organization. And yes, of course, Agile helps bring them all together, but I just wanted to really, clarify and emphasize that it's not just one or the other. You don't just implement Agile on its own with all these practices without some of the soft skills and have that. It's really a high-performance transformation, and it's a big change. So it requires a lot of change management as you try to move in this direction. So the multitasking game is a really popular game with 1,000 people here on this webinar. There's no way we can play it. But I wanted to show you the result. I get 4 people to come up. Imagine these are the 4 people, and I have a worker bee. They represent a team member who needs to write 4 names, right, for each customer. So each customer is basically, they have a name that they want to write. And so the first day that we do it, and this is what a lot of organizations do, is no customer shall wait. No customer shall wait means that Mr. Workabee, so this little person over here who's going to write on the flip chart, they have to take letters for the names from all the customers all at the same time. which means all of the customers, think of these as 4 different projects. I have to work on them all at the same time. I work on this one a little bit, then she screams louder, so I get her requirement done, then she starts screaming, and I get her requirement done. And this is the result, right? So they wrote all the names, but as you can see, there's some defects and quality issues with the name, and it took 36 seconds to get this one done. The number 3 over here, Jack, he's the vice president that screams really loud, so he always gets his project done in record time, but everyone else struggles to fit in because they're all looking at the same resource or at the same team to get that work done. We try it a different way, the multitasking game, and we say, all right, each customer gets their turn. Each customer gets one requirement, and then we go to the next customer, and we write the K, and then the third customer will just write the J, A, and then we'll come back again and write A, E. So this normally feels like it's a much fair process. It feels like there's some sanity. You know, as a project person or as a team member, you at least get to talk to each customer and get one of their requirements. The problem is it takes forever to finish all of it, right? So this is like really bad from a time to market perspective because you're nibbling at each one of them. You're not really getting any of them done quickly. And quite frankly, customers start to lose interest because you keep coming back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. You're never really focusing on seeing the whole project or the whole deliverable that they're trying to get done. And the third version of this game, our last iteration that we normally play, is called one customer at a time based on value. So what we do is we rank the customers. We move our customers around and say, look, we'd love to, but I can't have all of you push your requirements against this person all at the same time. I'm going to have to rank you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 based on business value, dependency, and risk. And we'll just start with Sarah. Sarah, can we go ahead and get all of your letters? And so Sarah gets done in 6 seconds. Carrie gets done in 12, Jack in 17, Alex, who's the last person in the line, still gets done after 22 seconds. It's actually remarkable when you look at this. It's the same exact problem we're trying to solve. It's 4 different customers with 4 different requirements and only one person to get it done. How we get it done influences dramatically the end result. So this last one, you know, time to market was amazing, quality was much better, and there was a lot more focus. So what does this have to do with Agile, with portfolio management? In this example over here, we actually had our developer or our team member pull the project. In those 2, they were being pushed against, right? The requirements were being thrown at this individual, and they just had to deal with them as much as they could. They were multitasking. In this one over here, they were able to pull the requirement. Once they had the capacity and they were done with Sarah, they pulled in the next deliverable, which was to write Carrie, and they were able to actually finish Carrie with some focus. So a lot higher effectiveness and efficiency. I know it sounds like a fun game, and it's only a game, but you know, we play this with a lot of executives, and it's very, very, very powerful. They start to see the actual cost of multitasking, and that by creating a ranked backlog of work, you actually get work done faster. It doesn't slow you down. So what problem are we trying to solve? Multitasking people on several projects at the same time, which is starting too many things. No single point of entry. Projects can come in from anywhere. Your manager, your boss, your customer, your email, a phone call is how you get a requirement or something that you need to do. There's no really qualification gate in some organizations, or quite frankly, the qualification gate is so heavy and so thick that everyone goes through the exception process. There's a false illusion of progress by getting things started. And so organizations measure success based on how many things did we get started, and I think all of you know that's not the right question. The right question is how many things have you completed lately? And unfortunately in Agile we call this WIP, work in progress. If you've got a ton of items that are in progress, then your whole organizational efficiency goes down. For those of you familiar with Kanban, we do that. We talk a lot about Kanban and limiting work in progress. At the team level, we're going to take that maybe 2-3 levels up and talk about it from an organizational perspective. Starting a whole bunch of things and not finishing them just reduces your effectiveness for all of it. The constant resource shifting causes lack of focus. Not knowing what capacity we have, just signing up for way more things that we can really get done. Not knowing how to say no, and even what I prefer is not even the word no, it's sure, let's rank that on the backlog. Oh, you've got this wonderful new idea? That's awesome. That sounds awesome. Let's take that to the team that managed the enterprise backlog, and let's see where they're going to rank that. And if they rank that way low, then it's way low. It's not even necessarily saying no. It's just, let's see how that ranks against our other priorities. In case I haven't said this clearly, this is the #1 killer of your productivity and your effectiveness as an organization. So even Agile, and I've seen so many organizations try to apply Agile at the team level, which is awesome, and they start to see some traction. And then old school mentality of shifting resources, pulling them out of the Agile teams, shuffling them around, having them work on 5 project teams at the same time. All that kicks in again, and then everything that you've tried to do with your Agile team starts to erode, because the bigger problem is this, right? It's really the portfolio management problem and the capacity measurement problem. And that's what causes the lack of focus even within the current Agile teams that are trying so hard to execute and focus on something. So ultimately, here's what we're trying to do. We're trying to move away from these siloed teams that are functional, so they all do the same thing. This is like the analyst group, this is like the testing group, this is the group that does underwriting, this is the group that does this, and create teams that are cross-functional, high-performing, and they can actually get something done and deliver value. Most of these functional teams on their own actually don't deliver any value. They need to collaborate, they need their work to be handed off to another team for the next part to be done. And so what we're saying and suggesting is, why are we organizing this way? Why don't we organize ultimately in a cross-functional way and build stable teams that know how to get work done throughout the organization, right? So we'll talk a little bit more about this. So what we're moving from, and this is something that we share in our servant leadership course, we're moving from this inverted way of thinking, which is management creates value. This is how an organization looks at itself today. It's very hierarchical, right? It's who reports to who. And you know, that's a beautiful picture and everything. It's a great picture when that's all you're trying to figure out is who reports to who. The problem is this picture doesn't show you how does the work get done, because this picture over here leads to what we just looked over here, which is, you know, these functional silos. So we're rethinking in terms of management creates value, employees serve them. We're shifting to, well, actually teams create enterprise value, and leaders empower them and remove impediments and set the vision, of course, and serve them. So do I still need leaders? Absolutely. Do I need leaders to set the vision, provide clarity on what our strategic goals are? What do we need to do? Give me the ability to focus, right? Remove impediments, empower me, absolutely. But ultimately, who actually delivers value for your organizations are these cross-functional teams that need to work with each other to actually get the work done. So it's sort of rethinking about how we measure value. Sometimes we ask the wrong questions today. Which resources are available instead of which team is ready to pull this project into their backlog? So again, we're starting to shift more into talking about teams as opposed to individual resources. Instead of saying, how can I have an enterprise view of my resources, again, thinking about individuals, you should really say, how can I have an enterprise view of how many execution teams I've got? How many cross-functional execution teams do I really have? Instead of saying, what is my enterprise capacity in terms of resource hours, which is a very common question that the PMO likes to ask, it's really, what is my enterprise velocity per quarter? Let's think about that for a second. I've got, let's just say, 10 teams executing in my company, right? Let's say I'm a small company. Some companies, I think one of our clients, PayPal, they've got, 300 teams, right? And at least they have the number now. They know how many teams they have. So I'm going to take those teams, figure out how many points do they deliver. For those of you familiar with Agile, in Agile, a team has velocity. They deliver points, and I'll show you an example of some of the burn-up charts that we produce from that. But from those points, every team has some level of predictable velocity if you keep them stable, obviously, if you don't keep shuffling them around. So the question that you can ask, and obviously it's not going to be 100% accurate, but at least it gives you some indicator, is if I have 10 teams, and each team delivers about 100 points per quarter, and of course that's low, but let's just say, or let's say 1,000 points per quarter, then 1,000 times 10, right, that's my enterprise velocity per quarter. That's my capacity. That's how much work we can pull in or even think about for the next quarter. It's the same exact principles that we use at the team level in terms of measuring capacity and velocity and using those numbers to help us predict future delivery. And of course those numbers can change, but they at least become some level of leading indicators. It's the same conversation that we're going to have at the enterprise level. So what does a team look like? You're very familiar probably, if you've watched the videos or obviously if you have an Agile background, is that a team, a single team, is a cross-functional team. They have to have a product owner, and the product owner comes up with the vision of what the team needs to work on and why. They sort of own this ranked backlog that's supposed to be ranked top-down. You need someone to be a team facilitator, someone to hold the team accountable for having a healthy process in terms of actually having a stand-up session, having a demo if they're using Scrum, for example, really interacting and removing impediments, right? Empowering the team so they're really figuring out the how. Engaging everyone, helping the team self-organize, right? So someone needs to facilitate this healthy process and be accountable for the process. We call them the Scrum Masters. Some people call them the Agile. Whatever you want to call them. If you're using Scrum, they're the Scrum Master. They're the team facilitator. But basically, their role is to make sure they're facilitating a healthy process. And the product owner, the facilitator, or the Scrum Master, and the team, those are the three roles that are very popular in Scrum. I like to talk about this person or people, it could be several people, in that a team, inside of the team, needs to have someone who at least can have the vision of how. Teams also struggle if they're all brand new people and no one has the vision of how, the technical vision, right? How do we really do this? So it could be an architect, it could be multiple architects, it could be 2 or 3 different technical leads that at least have done this before and potentially could help us with the vision of how do we solve this problem so the team doesn't flounder, right? A team, for them to be healthy and successful, have to have some measurement. They have to have some burn-up charts that say, okay, every iteration, here's how many points, here's what we're actually delivering, right? This is what I always call just the foundation, the basic team structure. If I don't have a product owner or they're not engaged, if I don't have a Scrum Master or I have one that's ineffective, if I don't have anyone helping the team figure out how and the team's like completely flustered, if I don't have a team that's willing to self-organize and figure out the day-to-day tasks and how they're going to get the work done, if I don't have a backlog and if I don't have measurements, something's broken within this team structure, right? Let's look at a program then. Now that you understand a basic team, a program is nothing more than multiple teams. Some people call this Scrum of Scrums, whatever you want to call it. It's basically I have multiple teams that are working on a larger initiative, and that initiative, it could be a program, it could be a large effort that requires a lot of integration. I need a program leadership team. I need a team that's very similar. The sponsor of the whole program may be like the Uber product owner, right, the chief product owner. And there still needs to be an Agile program manager. It's similar to your traditional program manager, except they're using Agile techniques. They realize that they have a backlog, they probably have a program management wall themselves. They have to have, daily stand-up meetings with this team, or potentially, I have some teams that don't do it every day, program teams that do it maybe 3 times per week. They bring the members of these teams together in, combined demos, combined retrospectives. They're the ones that are, this team's really looking at the dependencies between these teams, integration points, when should all this work come together to be integrated. So they're really managing the program. They're making sure they're looking at a lot of these measurements. The burn-up charts are more at the program level. How's the program doing in terms of how many points have been delivered, right? Take this one level above. So one level above is almost like at the portfolio level. And it depends on the size of your organization. What is a portfolio? A portfolio is nothing more than a combination of all of the initiatives, projects, deliverables, programs within a specific area of your business. So large companies, some of our Fortune 500 clients, they have multiple portfolios. They have, think of like a banking where they would have like their mortgage portfolio and then they have their auto loan portfolio. It's almost like other mini companies within within the organization itself. And it could be a medium company that just have one enterprise portfolio, which is actually good. The more portfolios you have, the harder it is to have an enterprise view of what's important to you, right? Because you have to consolidate and figure out what really is number one. And some of you may say, well, I don't need to do that. I've got my priority list and it's clear within my own portfolio team. I don't need to work with the other portfolio teams. Okay, sure, I'll give you that if you don't have to use the same resources. If you're fighting around the same IT resources or whatever resources, if you're pulling from each other, then we do need to know what is number one priority. Is it your project or that project? If you've got stable teams that are completely dedicated only to your portfolio, then yeah, okay, great. Your number one priority is going to get done and you're not going to have to worry about some of the other teams. In all cases, having an enterprise portfolio management team is really important because every organization does need to know what is truly number 1, 2, and 3. So a portfolio management team constantly grooms a portfolio backlog, and they work in quarterly iterations. Traditionally today, a lot of portfolio teams, they sort of do this once a year big planning session where everyone, brainstorms every single thing that they've ever wanted, and they put it on this big priority list for the whole year. What we're advocating is doing that quarterly. Coming together once a year and visioning is not a bad idea, and coming up with an initial big, backlog, sure, no problem. But you do need to groom that backlog every single quarter, just like the Agile teams do it every single iteration, and look at what got done, what didn't get done, what was your velocity, and what do you need to stop, what do you need to start, and what should you continue to break down, and begin to measure what value did we actually get from any of the deliverables and the work that we got done in the last quarter. Having this mentality will also help you break those large multi-year projects into smaller sub-deliverables. Instead of having a project that only goes on for 2-3 years, there's some level of progress that needs to be made within those multi-year. So a portfolio management team, again, also needs, an executive. If this is your enterprise portfolio team, my opinion, and this is what we've been advocating, is the PMO. We've sort of, okay, this is the big aha moment, so hold on tight for this concept. You guys know that down at the team level, what used to happen before, right, before we moved to Agile, is we used to throw the whole project at the project manager and just say, you run with it, and a lot of times the customer was not engaged, right? Customer was not engaged. We just held the project manager accountable. You just go do it. This is what I want. This is my vision. I'm going to write it down for you here at a high level. Go do it. Let me know if you need any help. And what Agile has forced down at the team level is this concept that we know we need the product owner. You're going to have to come in here as the customer and be engaged with the team and really own this backlog. We can't just prioritize all this work on ourselves. We need you to give us feedback. We're doing the same exact thing here, except guess who we are trying to bring in as the product owner? It's your executive leadership team. The executive leadership team, especially if you are thinking about portfolio management at the enterprise level or at your portfolio level, we need your executives to take ownership now as product owners of this backlog. Instead of throwing that responsibility to the PMO and saying, PMO, you go deal with it. You prioritize, you figure out what's going on, you figure out if it's worth completing or not. Because executives, from the business are one of the primary people that keep adding to the backlog. They're the ones that have a lot of wonderful ideas and all these different things that are coming up that they want to add. And many times they're the ones that actually know how to maneuver in the system and get this resource and that resource and that team to rework and do something different and focus on their number one priority right now. So to fix this problem in the real world, what we've had to do is really focus on, can we get the executive team to understand the value of them coming together, becoming a team, having a facilitator, obviously, so the PMO acts like they're the actual portfolio facilitator, right? But they need to start making some tough decisions around what is priority, what is not, so the rest of the organization has clarity. Because organizations right now are in chaos if they don't know what is really, truly priority, right? If things keep changing every day, and maybe that's okay. Maybe it's okay for them to change, but what I would like you to do as an executive team is figure out how that change is going to impact the teams below. So do you want to stop this team for what they're working? Do you want to let them finish the deliverable and then pull your new priority? In Agile, we welcome change. Change is the norm. Change is not the exception. right? And we believe that as long as you slice things into smaller chunks, and the team's going to pull the top item, feel free to continue to change the bottom part, right? Move your deliverables up and down based on your priority. But once a team pulls a small deliverable, it would be great if they could get the focus to actually finish it, so they're not starting more than they can actually finish. So, what would an organization look like if they were designed based on stable teams? Yeah, take a deep breath. I know, it's an overwhelming picture. All right, try not to focus on the whole thing at the same time. All right, try not to look at the whole picture. If your organization were to reconsider, instead of looking at itself from a hierarchical perspective and constantly drawing the picture of who reports to who, which again, that doesn't provide any value, it just shows you who reports to who. It doesn't answer the question of how does work flow. This kind of a model really says, this is a team that manages this work, this backlog, and it's our enterprise work. Here's our top initiatives and deliverables, and here's what we're trying to accomplish in each quarter. Work is prioritized and ranked here, and from this wall, we pull, and here's where the teams are that get work done. If you are a very large organization, you have multiple portfolios, this enterprise portfolio management team, when you're pulling, you have all your other portfolios. So it could be portfolio A, like the mortgage loan industry or the mortgage loan portfolio, the auto loan portfolio, whatever industry that you're in. That portfolio team may take one or two of these initiatives, break them down into smaller chunks, and have these stable teams execute for that portfolio. You might not be that big, so if you're not that big, then maybe you're just pulling from here and it's going to a program team. A program management team is a team that works, like we said, on a program that requires multiple teams to get done. You actually might be a small enough organization that you don't need any of those two teams, right? So almost hide this and think of, I just have 8, 10, 20, 30 teams, and there's one enterprise backlog, and I constantly, those teams, when they're done with working on what they're working on, my Scrum Master or the product owner and the Scrum Master come and pull the next item that needs to be completed. This team down over here is a work request management team. Why am I showing this as two different places? Because I want to emphasize something. There's two types of work that comes into an organization. There's strategic projects, and then there's enhancements and support and minor modifications, things that are just really small and quick. Strategic projects normally come from your executive team. They're visionary. They're supposed to help you improve and get better, right? And take you, new products, new services, major enhancements to existing systems. So it could be new efforts or major enhancements. Those should come in over here, and they should go through a really good qualification process before they get ranked. One of the problems is just taking everyone's idea and then just beginning to work on it, right? Or just based on someone's rank, someone says, well, I've got a great idea, I'm going to say go, and then the go, no-go decision happens, and then someone has to, shuffle everything that they're working on just to get that. This is a filter over here that we'll talk a little bit more about in our next webinar in terms of the qualification process for work that's coming in. This over here is another filter, but it's more for just enhancements, support. It's the small stuff that keeps coming in that derails the teams from working on the strategic projects. And I know that many of you probably have teams that work on both, right? So I've seen that before. Some organizations, some of our more mature clients, are now moving towards having and designing strategic teams that only work on strategic projects, and they have wonderful stable teams that work on minor enhancements and teams that just work on support. So they've actually separated the teams' work from each other because they realize that any team that gets also support work will constantly be shuffling work and being shifted to do that kind of because it's always fire, right? The user's got something broken right now that they need fixed. So that will always take priority over some of the major strategic projects that you're working on. So this is a very tough conversation. I mean, it's obviously beyond the scope of this webinar, but it's a real decision that you have to make in terms of if you're going to create your teams and they're going to do both strategic work and they're going to do enhancements and support, how can you use Kanban in a way, or Scrum even, in a way where you're separating those two and the team is coming up with policies of, how much strategic work are they going to do and when are they going to pull some of this enhancement or support work, and what are those policies? Is it when it's critical? Is it when it's urgent? to basically help them shuffle between those two types of work. And I've seen teams do that successfully, or move into a model where teams are really focused on strategic and other teams are focused on enhancements and support work. So again, the idea is that you would begin to design your organization around stable teams, whether they're working on individual deliverables, whether it's a program, work request enhancements. Communities of practice is the concept that you're more familiar with today because you have the functional silos, right? The functional silos, so first thing I always get asked when someone looks at this is, oh, Sally, by creating all these stable teams, you've created new silos because all of the, for example, analysts are going to be spread out through all these stable teams, and they're not going to be able to talk to each other and talk about best practices for requirements gathering. All my engineers are going to be all over the place. They're never going to be together. It's so important for me for them to be together. That's what the communities of practices are. I think what we've done throughout the years is we've went from one extreme to the other, right? We either organize ourselves completely based on these functional silos, or some companies go completely to cross-functional teams, but it really needs both. We need both. We need the communities of practice. So if I'm an engineer, I need to be part of two different teams. I'm part of a stable team that's actually getting work done. But I also need to be part of the engineering community of practice that's working on best practices, tools, how do we make engineering, better throughout all of those, what are the patterns and best practices out there, what are the documentation, what are the artifacts, deliverables, things like that need to be consistent throughout all the stable teams. Another question that I get about stable teams is, are they really stable? And how do you keep them stable? They're stable as much as possible, let's put it that way. If this team pulls a big deliverable, a large, let's say, theme, and they're working on it and they realize, man, we need an expert in XYZ and that's not part of our team, then a little bit of tweaking may happen to this team based on this new deliverable. An additional analyst might come in and help. They might actually come in and pair with someone else to do knowledge transfer so this team knows how to do that in the future. There are sometimes some architects that really are shared, that is their role, or sometimes DBAs. They're not really 100% committed to one team. They really are the kind of individuals that do need to be shared between two teams, potentially, maybe three teams maximum, because of the knowledge that they have. But anytime you multitask an individual, you really are spreading them too thin, and it causes lack of focus. So I think the goal, a lot of people take everything to the extreme. Are we looking at 100% focused, dedicated teams? No, but let's at least attempt to move towards some level of stability, some level of lack of resource shifting all the time. And yeah, the more stable these teams are, the more the velocity is going to be consistent, and we'll take a look at some of these measures. So then, how does traditional, differ from Agile portfolio management? So think about it this way. Traditionally, projects that are approved they're approved to go. They're pushed immediately to the individual resources. So, I don't know how many of you out there, but I'm sure you guys have this go, no-go decision, right? You take a project, you go through your process to write a business case, get it approved. Once it's approved, someone has to make a go, no-go. And once they say go, what happens? You go find a project manager, right? And that project manager has to go beg, steal, and borrow resources from other projects because you've now become the number one priority. That's wrong. That's not the way to do it. You don't just create capacity out of nowhere because the project got approved. What we're recommending is that the team that has the capacity pulls this next top priority item. Think of this in that multitasking game as, scenario number 1 and 2, where you're pushing things against people. What you need to do is take that project that got approved and rank it. The next step after approval is ranking. Rank it on the backlog, and when it bubbles to the top, the team that has the capacity that finished something will pull it. That's the main difference. Good ideas quickly become projects without regard for capacity, and again, we talked about ideas here do need to go through the justification, qualification, initiation. We start as many projects as possible to maximize the feeling of making progress, where in Agile and Lean portfolio, we work in progress is limited. We're actually trying to limit how many projects we start so that we have effective throughput and we can actually get more work done. Project managers go out and, my favorite, beg, borrow, steal resources from other projects, and of course they will justify it because, well, see, I'm number one now. And in this case over here, this is really important. Instead of we pull people for the work, so I tried to make this simple. Instead of pulling people for the work that you want to get them done, teams pull the work to them. So the work comes to the team, right? So if I have a project and it really, or this small deliverable, and I really want to get it done, instead of pulling people out of existing stable teams, and that's the hardest thing to understand, you bring the work to that team, you take it to the product owner, and you say, hey, you lobby for it, right? You say, hey, I really want to get this done. Can you help me out? I know your team is powerful, they're effective, they can get this done. Here's why it's a priority. And you basically influence the product owner for that team to prioritize it and rank it up higher or lower, but the team will pull it as soon as they have the capacity to get it done. Success equals full resource utilization is sort of the way that we thought about it before. Here, it's not about every single person needs to be over-allocated. It's really about success is that teams have predictable velocity, measurable and predictable velocity. When I can get into an organization and see that they have 10 teams, and those teams on a predictable basis average between 100 to 150 points per month, let's just say, I'm measuring it that way, then that gives me a lot of power, folks. That gives me the power to figure out how much I can plan for the next upcoming 1 or 2 months, right? So that's how we measure success, is predictable velocity and value delivery. And then again, traditionally we focus on project teams. A team comes together because of a project, and then we blow them apart, and then we pull them together for a new project, and we blow them apart. And every project has to get all the way done, where in Agile we focus on value delivery teams. They're not focused on a project. They might be working on deliverables from multiple projects. There might be project A, project B, and project C, and all of them have different deliverables, and you just decided that the most valuable thing to work on right now is 2 deliverables from project A and 1 deliverable from project B, and this is the team that's going to work on it, right? Because they have the right skill set to do that. So it's less about getting a project done all the way, and it's more about breaking a project into smaller deliverables and then taking those high-value deliverables and having the team work on those. So we focus on value delivery teams that break projects down. These are some really awesome books out there that I thought, if you're interested, Mary Poppendick and Tom, they really started the whole leading software development, the concept of lean software development. I like obviously Dean Leffingwold's got amazing content around scaling software agility and his scaling model, similar to the one that I just showed you right now with some differences. And of course, Net Objectives, they've got the Lean Agile software. So these are good books, and these are the principles of Lean. And I, just for time purposes, I won't be able to go through these in detail, but they're all really about optimizing the whole. Instead of trying to optimize one project team and this project team, it's taking a much more enterprise view around how can I make the whole thing work better, right? It's a much bigger picture view. So let's just kind of recap some of this. We need to create vertically ranked portfolio backlogs, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Get away from the high, medium, low, because everything becomes high, right? It's just, what's your top 10? Tell me about number 1, 2, 3, 4 at this moment. And it's okay if you want to change them. We just need to know what are they. We need clarity. Teams pull from this backlog based on capacity. Work is not pushed to them. Backlog ranking takes business value, dependency, risk, and size. A lot of people used to think that we just rank based on business value. That's all good, but what if one item depends on something else getting done that has lower business value? Okay, well then dependency actually trumps business value. Well, what if I have a deliverable, which I work with a lot of, we have a lot of customers that are in the healthcare industry, and a lot of the mandates that are going on right now with the healthcare reform and all of that. There are some projects and mandates that are high risk. If you don't get them done by this specific time, you might get penalized or you might not be in the market. And so even though they might not actually have the biggest value, because of their risk, they might need to be ranked higher. So we really, and I hope that you come to some of the upcoming webinars, because I'm going to show you in a little bit of detail how we're going to use a game called Biggest Bang for the Buck. It's a really fun game that we have executives and portfolio managers do to rank and prioritize their backlog and come up with that ranked backlog. And it's really fun, and you can see all those in that game. High-level sizing uses relative complexity. So if you're coming up with sizing for large initiatives or even big deliverables, hours is not the way to size it. Hours is a very precise measure. It's made for tasks. It's made for things that have no ambiguity. When you're dealing with ambiguous deliverables, you need to use higher level t-shirt sizing. And if you're not familiar with estimating and planning in Agile, there's a lot of wonderful webinars that have already been recorded here on the Agile community of practice. You could also go to agilevideos.com under webinars, and I have one published on Agile estimating. Break down projects and initiatives into smaller, minimal marketable features. So no longer think about the multi-year projects. Think about what can I deliver in the next quarter. And even if it doesn't go to market, say that again. Did someone just say something? Oh, time check. We got 10 minutes. Perfect. Thank you. So breaking things down into smaller chunks. Minimal marketable features are ranked against each other, so success equals delivering the highest value item. It's not completing the whole project. That's not necessarily how we measure success. Design and build stable teams, and then stop the whole go, no-go decision. When something's approved, you need to rank it. Here's a practical thing that you can go do right now, right? People want, okay, this all sounds great, Sally, but my head's spinning right now, and this is just way too big, and how the heck am I going to go do all that? You know, my executives are going to need to buy in to this level of a conversation. Yeah, but here's what you can go do. We design stable teams by putting them up on flip charts. The blue stickies on the top are the product owners. The pink over here are who are the Scrum Masters. The yellow on this side are the team members, but this is, you know, it could be one or two people that are technical leads. And then in the middle over here, we start just putting stickies for who are the team members right now that are working on the whatever PFD or whatever your project or your team. This is what we call the as is. Just draw it as what it is right now. Now, what I really want you to do, because this will be fun for you, really fun, see those circles? If it's a half circle, this person's allocated 50% to this team. If it's like even less than a half, then they're probably 25% or less. If it's a full circle, then that's a full-time product owner, right? Completely dedicated. When you draw all of your teams, and I had a company, you know, do this, and they didn't use the Post-it note colors the way that, you know, by role, but when you start to look at all of the circles and all the teams, you'll start to see that, boy, why is John on this team, and on this team, and how can we begin to create some level of stability? The items over here those are the next features that are their deliverables on their backlog. And you know, the most beautiful picture that you can have, and we've had this at several organizations, is when you can have many of these flip charts up, and that's your big as is. That's your capacity plan. That's who's working on what right now and what % allocation are they. And then you can start making decisions around, do I really need, you know, 3 developers in this team to all be half-time? Can I make 2 of them full-time and have that one person be full-time on this team? You know, these tough conversations begin to happen, right? And then you'll start to see that some of your cross-functional teams are not very cross-functional, like this team over here for this client. It was called the creative team. Actually, they're pretty functional. That's a team that only does creative design, and all the other teams depend on them. So that means that they are functional, they're a silo. Every other team can't get something done unless they use a resource from here. So I would have redesigned that and figured out how to make this a community of practice, a creative community of practice, but have some of these individuals be actually allocated to the real teams that need them, so we don't have to constantly be shifting. This was a strategic executive session that we did where the team put under their portfolio all their large deliverables, and they put their teams next to them. So as they were doing portfolio planning and coming up and ranking their actual deliverables, immediately they were looking at their teams and saying, well, do they have the capacity? Which team would pull which one next? And it's a tough conversation. I don't think you get through all of it, but at least it's the beginning of who's going to be doing what. I'm going to skip this part because a lot of you are probably familiar with velocity and burn up. But I wanted to show you that, you know, obviously you've got a burn-up chart, which everyone is familiar with probably, but the most powerful way of looking at velocity is looking at this. What did you get done for me, and how much did it cost me? So this line above over here is actually what we call the scope line. The line is how many points were on the backlog. tracking as they go up. So it looks like in iteration 2 over here, someone added 5 more points to the backlog. And so this is really just sort of tracking the scope. How many points do we have? The blue line is what the team targeted to get done, what they were hoping to accomplish in terms of number of points in that iteration. And the pink line is what they actually got done. And this is very similar. This was my budget, my funding line. The green is what we budgeted to spend per iteration, and the red is what we're actually spending, right? And this is just basic value measurement, right? Earned value management, EVM, from an Agile perspective, by looking at cost and value delivered. And one of my colleagues, Mike Griffiths, he has even a nicer view that combines both of them. We're going to continue to talk, now I'm going to wind it down, we're going to continue to talk about planning and portfolio planning in our upcoming webinars. And unfortunately, we can't do portfolio planning without strategic planning. So that's why the next webinar is going to be focused on some of this upfront kind of work that you have to do to initiate the backlog and to have an actual strategic goals, and then to create your ranked backlog. And we are going to go into this life cycle diagram in a lot more detail. This will be available for you to download. I'm going to show you the link here in a little bit where I've put this one, and I've also put our sample Agile workbook. And so our next webinar will be focused on, okay, strategic visioning and then building and aligning the portfolio backlog. How do we do some of these steps? Then we'll walk through qualification and feasibility. What are some Agile techniques that you could use for qualifying and prioritizing? And then our upcoming webinars after that will be on capacity, planning and budgeting from an Agile perspective. And then this is all stuff that you do up front just to even get your baseline going. And then this is the ongoing, every quarter, how do you continue to groom the work that you've done? Okay, so I'm going to skip this and go into taking some questions. Are we ready for some questions? The first one I think we've already covered, right? Which is how different is Agile portfolio management from the traditional management. I think the slide that I had that was comparing both of them is a really good slide for you to go back and look at, just in terms of how we think differently about pulling work versus pushing work and measurement of work. Okay, the next one is, if only a portion of an organization has the appetite for Agile and the other groups which you work with don't, is it even worth shifting to Agile? Yes, it is. It is worth shifting to Agile. Almost every organization that moves to Agile starts that way. You can't get the whole company to move. You have to prove success initially by piloting Agile and proving that you can, and this is why I love this picture, that with Agile comes clarity, focus, and the ability to execute predictably, and you have healthy and happy people doing it. So if you're not able to do it within an organization, I think what you do need to figure out is, how will I coexist? How can I manage the outside world while protecting the Agile team from the chaos? How can I slowly begin to remove organizational impediments when the big VP comes in and says, no, I want to shift 2-3 resources from that team because I've got a new big project that I want them to work on now. That's the challenge. You know what I'm going to do, guys? I just want to show you, this is where you can download. This link over here is where you can download this presentation. So I just wanted to make sure that you have that. I'm also going to upload it so that it's part of the Agile community or practice. I think I've already uploaded it. But the cheat sheets that I covered is from tinyurl.com/Agile training.